Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. William Small, your money mentor, and I'm the founder of DrWill Enterprises and the host of Wealth Builder Seminars in Dallas, Texas. I hold a PhD in Biblical Studies, and I've written over 10 Bible-based business books, and I've helped hundreds of people quit their jobs, start businesses, or earn extra income by working from home. The information in my videos is better than what you would receive in some of the best business schools in the country. And I'm sharing this wisdom with you for free, but the only thing that I need you to do in return from me is to subscribe to this channel and share these videos with your family and friends. If you're ready to begin building wealth for you or your family, you can go to my website and download my ebook, Money Does Grow on Trees. God designed the family to be the primary organization for wealth generation, and this book is designed to show you how money grows on the family tree. And brothers and sisters, we don't fail to become wealthy because of what we know. We fail because of what we don't know. Download the book today, and I guarantee that you'll be glad you did. All right? Amen. Now, today's videos is episode 3 of my Black Words Matter series, which is entitled Discrimination, Your Vote, and the Federal Courts. This series was going to be only 3 parts, but I need to add a 4th part as a result of the way Trump and the Republican Party is using the courts and the law to disenfranchise Black people by restricting the power of our votes. Now, the purpose of the Black Words Matter series is to illustrate the fact that when we allow our detractors to define our words and control our language, they can control our future and our fortunes. And one of the reasons Black people struggle to be wealthy is because whenever we try to take control of our language, our detractors counter by trying to control the narrative. And this is why whenever we say Black Lives Matter, they respond with All Lives Matter. Okay, therefore, it is important for us to understand that Black words matter and that we put ourselves in jeopardy whenever we allow our detractors to control the language and the narrative. Now, I want to discuss 3 issues in this video: the word discrimination, your vote, and what is happening in the federal courts currently that could disenfranchise Black people in America for the next 40 years. And let's begin with the word discrimination, because the Democrats have worked hard for over the last 65 years or so to make discrimination illegal or a crime. And that's a crime against humanity or worthy of at least a civil penalty, if not a criminal penalty. However, Republicans have worked hard to make discrimination legal, to take away the crime and therefore all of the penalties out of discrimination. They have managed to change the language and the narrative pertaining to the word discrimination so that legally there is no more crime or penalty associated with discriminating. The words in our language shape our culture, and the way that we understand words serve to position us within that culture. Therefore, it is critical that we have the correct meaning of words so that we can position ourselves properly. And if we allow other people to determine what words mean, they will have the power to dictate the way that we perceive and position ourselves. Then we will become their minors or Class B dependents until we learn to break free from their captivity. In order to discover what words actually mean, you have to use syllabication or etymology. Etymology is the process of discovering what a word actually means based on how it was first used. The meaning of words change over time because people begin to use the same word in different ways. And this is why you'll find in the dictionary that one word can have several different meanings. That's because the dictionary does not tell you what words actually mean. It only tells you how words are commonly used. Etymology tells you what words actually mean. Now, syllabication tells you what words actually mean also. However, syllabication is a process of breaking down each word into syllables using etymology to discover the original word that the syllable came from and what that really means, and then putting those syllables back together to reveal the word's true meaning. The word discrimination, for example, when broken down by syllables, gives you 3 parts: the prefix dis, the suffix tion, and the base word, which could be either crime or criminal. Okay, the original meaning of the prefix dis means to take away. The original meaning of the suffix tion means the act or process. And now let's examine the definitions of the word crime, which there are 3. Number 1, an action or commission that constitutes an offense that may be prosecuted by the state and is punishable by law. Number 2, illegal activities. And number 3, an action or activity that, although not illegal, is considered to be evil, shameful, or wrong. Now, when you put these 3 syllables together, you get their true definitions and the meaning of the word discrimination, which is the act or process of taking away the offense that may be prosecuted or punished by law, the act or process of making activities that were once illegal legal, and the act or process of making an activity that is considered to be evil, shameful, or wrong totally acceptable. The things that made discrimination illegal were the Constitution, the courts, and Congress. Republicans have found a way to circumvent the Constitution by taking control over the Congress and the courts. Now let's see what they did with this control by looking at your right to vote as an example, okay? Republicans are working hard to make it legal once again to discriminate against black people and make it legal to take away our right to vote. The 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution makes it illegal to discriminate against black people, and in Section 1 it says the right of citizens in the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. And Section 2 says the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So in 1964, 90 years after the 15th Amendment was ratified, Congress finally passed the appropriate legislation to enforce the law. And that legislation was the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, and sexual orientation. It prohibited the unequal application of voter registration requirements, racial segregations in school and public accommodations, and employment discrimination. Now that all sounds good, but due to Republicans' hard work and tenacious efforts, along with Republican control of the U.S. Supreme Court, they gutted the Civil Rights Act of '64.
For the most part, elections are up to a state. The Constitution says a state runs its elections. These states are put under federal guidance, the Voting Rights Act, because of past discrimination. So now the court is saying the test you had in place is outdated. It goes back to 1965. So much has changed. Our culture has changed. Our society has changed. Other discrimination laws have changed. Hopefully, these states have made substantial progress. So if you're going to do this, you have to rewrite the test, if you will. If you look at the politics of the moment, the president and his Justice Department made a very strong case to the Supreme Court that they wanted to keep this law in place. If you look through the states that are affected, most of them will have Republican governors, and this is a debate that's going to play out.
And not only in voter ID laws, but also in redistricting, such as the Texas redistricting plan. We're going to see how states handle this in terms of how they draw their congressional districts, and they could wind up in court.
And at least for now, Jake, the bottom line is that these southern states, largely southern states that had these special requirements that the federal government imposed in that 1965 Voting Rights Act, they are no longer going to have to deal with that, at least for the time being, unless Congress takes special action. And as I said, I don't anticipate that special action anytime soon.
That's right, Wolf. And what's interesting is, of course, the 1965 Voting Rights Act was renewed in 2006 for 25 years. It was an overwhelming vote by a very divided Congress. The vote was 390 to 33 in the House and 98 to 0 in the Senate. But I want to bring in Professor Jonathan Turley. What's interesting, though, is even though there was that overwhelming vote in favor of continuing the Voting Rights Act, Chief Justice John Roberts made no secret about his skepticism that it was still required.
Yeah, this is very much a long-term project for Chief Justice Roberts. You know, he stated years ago that he was highly critical of Section 5 particularly, although as Jeff mentioned, taking out Section 4 effectively takes Section 5 offline. But Roberts has been gunning for this for some time. What's different about this is the lack of deference to Congress. During the oral argument, both Roberts and Scalia chided Congress and basically said no member of Congress has the guts to vote against a bill like this because you don't want to be viewed as favoring racism or interfering with the rights of minorities.
And this set the stage for Republican governors and Republican-controlled legislators to begin engaging in black voter suppression again. Now, Republicans came out swinging at the state level where they had a power and control, and they quickly started doing everything they could to restrict the votes of black and brown folks through voter ID laws, purging voter rolls, restricting access to the polls, and a whole host of other evil, shameful, and wrong activities. So, why is it so important for Republicans to control black people's access to the ballot? It's because they know, whereas we seem to be unaware, that ever since black people obtained the right to vote, we have made the difference in every election. Our actions at the ballot box, whether we either did or did not vote, has determined the outcome in every election. The only reason Trump is president right now is because 2 million less black people voted in 2016 as compared to 2012, and 8 million black people overall did not vote in 2016. That happened in part because Russia heavily targeted black people on social media, blanketing their feeds with police brutality videos, incidents that happened 5 and 10 years ago, but black people were responding to them as if they had just happened. And the other people responsible for 8 million black people not turning out to vote, were the two most dangerous groups of men in the black community. And that's the ignorant and unlearned black preacher like Darrell Scott and Mark Burns, and the so-called woke, enlightened, or activist type nigga, such as Tariq Nasheed and Umar Johnson. Both of these groups of men sell out the black community for money because it is how they make their living. The ignorant preacher is dumb enough to believe that Trump is gonna cut them a check, and niggas like Tariq and Umar make their money off the misery in the black community and our penchant for buying into conspiracy theories. They have to keep the misery level high, and this is why they've been talking all kinds of crap about either not voting or talking trash about the Democrats. If they can get Trump reelected, the misery level will remain high and they will keep making money. Now, the most dangerous group of black people who don't reside in the black community or don't have to deal with the misery of the black community is a black celebrity. The problem with the black celebrity is they are given their microphones and platforms by the white power structure, so in order to maintain their positions and keep making money, they have to work subtly and craftily like a snake to help Republicans restrict black voter turnout. And this is why you see that ignorant nigga Charlemagne keep talking that highly debunked nonsense about Joe Biden wrote the whole crime bill. But newsflash, my ignorant brother, no one senator has ever single-handedly wrote a major piece of legislation by himself or got it passed by himself. No matter how much you explain to this nigga that he just refuses to get it. The 1964 crime bill was called an omnibus bill because it had all kinds of legislation rolled into it that had been proposed by other lawmakers, but Charlemagne keeps repeating that lie because he has to appease his masters. And before the ex-Republican Michael Bloomberg dropped out of the race, he was supporting him. And somehow he was able to overlook the damage that Bloomberg's stop and frisk policy did to black people in New York, but he keeps trying to give Joe Biden, or making him the only one responsible for writing the whole crime bill.
Talk to me though about Bloomberg, because obviously he's come under immense criticism, right, for stop and frisk, and whether he intended that as a racist policy and his response to that. Why is it that you think he has the best agenda then for African Americans?
I mean, listen, all the criticism is deserving. You know, I give him criticism. You know, when it comes to things like the stop and frisk policy, there are people that are still being affected by that today. So, you know, you always have to hold them accountable for that. But, you know, I'm just going off the fact that I'm voting for my interests in 2002.
As I stand before you today, I am fearful for the future of this country. No one more committed to the fundamental principles to make this country what it is. That my good friend, my late wife's great friend, Joe Biden.
I just don't understand the hype behind Joe Biden. You know, to quote Tupac, when I see Joe Biden, I'm like, yo, you really ain't shit without your homeboy. Because without Barack Obama, I don't see what all the hype is behind Joe Biden. Like, they talk about him being the most electable candidate and he's the only person that can beat Trump. How? He hasn't even proven he can beat Bernie Sanders in a primary yet. So what makes them think he could beat, you know, Donald Trump?
And the real reason Charlemagne doing this is because he thinks you're stupid. Now, cats like Ice Cube has a business that he has to get investors for, and he has to demonstrate that he has a certain amount of power and control over young people. So this is why you might be seeing him doing what he's doing, because he needs money to keep his business going, okay? Now, the problem here is if Trump gets reelected and Republicans retain power, the MAGA people who promote white supremacy will do everything they can to return the country to the Jim Crow era or put black people back into a type of slavery. And the people who gather at Trump rallies actually believe that the South will rise again, and they want what they call a return to their heritage, and they believe that Trump will deliver it to them. And by the way, when they talk about reclaiming their heritage, do you know that they're talking about you? You are the property, the inheritance, or the heritage that fathers passed on to their sons during slavery. They want to make it, they want the right again to take black people's labor for free. They want to be able to rape black women and children whenever they get ready, and they want to be able to murder black men with impunity, and they want it all to be legal. These people know that this is what MAGA actually means, and so this is why they eagerly show up to these rallies. However, they also know that black people obtain their freedoms through the laws and the courts, so this is why Trump and Republicans are packing the federal courts with racist judges.
President Trump really dislikes these judges.
The Ninth Circuit is a disaster. Nobody can believe these decisions we're getting from the Ninth Circuit. It's a disgrace. The Ninth Circuit, everybody knows it. It's totally out of control.
When Trump took office, most of the Ninth Circuit's judges had been appointed by Democratic presidents, and they overruled some of Trump's most provocative executive orders. The travel ban, emergency funding for a border wall, they all stopped here.
Very hard to win at the Ninth Circuit, if not impossible.
But that's changing.
We're slowly putting new judges in the Ninth Circuit.
Trump has already added 7 new judges to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And by the end of his first term, there's a good chance that the Ninth Circuit could look very different. We usually think of the 3 branches of government as the president, Congress, and the Supreme Court. But it's down here in the lower federal courts where President Trump is building his longest-lasting legacy.
You know, when I got in, we had over 100 federal judges that weren't appointed. It was like a big, beautiful present to all of us.
And now they're moving to place a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, and if they move to make slavery illegal again, a racist federal judge will say, oh, it's illegal. And if we appeal to the Supreme Court, the Republicans there will say it's illegal also. And so if they come to get you, then what are you gonna do? You can listen to these don't vote, both parties are the same, or hold your vote niggas if you want to, but if they come for you, these niggas won't be able to help you. This is not the time to be playing that game right now. We should have did that a long time ago. Okay, now, how will they be able to turn the clock back on black people? The judge Trump just nominated for the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, believes that the Constitution should be interpreted as it was originally written.
Judge Amy Coney Barrett is expected to be President Donald Trump's pick to fill Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat on the U.S. Supreme Court. He's hoping she'll become the court's all-important 6th conservative vote. If confirmed by the Senate, Barrett, at 48 years old, could shape the high court for decades.
A president has a bigger impact on the court the longer the justice he or she appoints stays in office.
She's long expressed her affinity for the late Justice Antonin Scalia, whom she clerked for in the Supreme Court, and his support for originalism, or interpreting the Constitution according to its original meaning.
Justice Scalia's philosophy of judging was not only right as a matter of the constitutional structure, but it was also self-discipline.
The problem is the originally written Constitution had black people listed as 3/5 human, and that language was never changed. Also, the Constitution did not recognize black people as U.S. citizens, and this is why Dred Scott lost his case when he sued for his freedom. The court ruled that he couldn't sue in federal court because he was property, and by being property and not a citizen, he had no right to bring forth the lawsuit. And unbeknownst to black people, that case was never overturned, and in effect is still the law of the land. This is why so many poor white people who yearn to have supremacy over black people legally show up at Trump's rallies and cheer wildly. These people believe that the South will rise again, and while we are marching in the streets protesting, they are rallying because the way that Trump is taking over the federal courts, they can see that their desire for supremacy is manifesting legally. It's time for us to wake up, start organizing, and start voting. We have been complaining since the 70s about what the white man is doing to us, but nothing has changed because we complain, but we don't do anything. And what's the difference between the protesting we've been doing today and what we were doing back in the 50s and 60s? If you look at the images closely, you can't really see a difference. What is the difference between the young black boy being murdered by white men who white juries let go free and black men who are killed by white police today that white juries let go unpunished? Look at this video on the trial of Emmett Till's murders, and you'll see that there is no difference from today except for the time and place.
Black organizations like the NAACP and the black press worked especially hard to keep the case in the news, to make an example of Southern racism for the world.
I had covered the courts in many areas of this country, but the Till case was unbelievable. I mean, I just didn't get the sense of being in a courtroom.
As the trial ended, a defense lawyer told the jury he was, quote, sure every last Anglo-Saxon one of you has the courage to free these men. It took the jury an hour to find the men not guilty.
Secure a just verdict. Went into a courtroom that had been set up for acquittal. They played with their children, sat with their wives. There wasn't a handcuff in sight, and neither did a deputy sheriff stand close by with a gun. They were on a family picnic, a holiday, with the consent, approval, and cooperation of the officials who are supposed to dispense justice in the state of Mississippi.
White juries acquit white murders of black victims constantly, and they do it right in front of our faces repeatedly because we have not figured out how to take power. They do it because they want to make America great again, and Trump wears his hair like Elvis because Elvis was the king, and when Elvis was the king at a time when in America where the white man was king and a nigga knew his place. Again, the reason that Trump is president is because 8 million black people didn't vote in 2016. The reason black people can be murdered by white people and not be held accountable is because you didn't vote. The reason Republicans take control over the states where black people have a greater number of the population is because you don't vote in the midterms. You vote in the presidential elections, but when most of the governors and the state legislators run for power, you stay home and just give them that power, and then they vote in the MAGA Republicans. If you are old enough to vote and you don't vote, then don't complain when people come and put you back in slavery again. I make enough money where I can go and live in another country without having to worry about getting a green card or getting a job there. Can you do that? If you can't, then you better vote early, and vote in person. All right? Amen. Well, that's all that I have for now. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and share this video with your family and friends, and I'll be back with something new that nobody told you. Until then, remember that God loves you, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it, and I'll see you next time on Wealth Builder Seminars.